Hi there, and welcome to Israel Explained. Is there going to be an Iran deal with the Trump administration edition? So, there's been a lot of developments that have suggested that the Trump administration, which talked a lot about maximal pressure and all options being on the table, including a possible strike against the Iranian nuclear program, have changed their direction and are moving towards a diplomatic resolution of the problem, possibly a new Iran deal. A source in the Trump administration told Channel 12, quote, the president is alarmed at the idea of an attack on Iran. He will want to reach a very restrictive deal that will stop Iran from reaching nuclear capabilities and believes he can reach an understanding with Iran. More than that, he believes the Iranians will run to the negotiations table under him, end quote. And several Israeli officials were quoted as saying that they're now convinced that Trump wants to pursue the diplomatic route. He might attack if it fails, but won't attack until he's made absolutely sure that it has. And, this is actually in line with some of his campaign promises that he will end wars, um, and the isolationist impulse of some of his promises. Some of his other promises involved toughness on Iran. So it looks like that's where it fell. Now, when Trump appointed Marco Rubio as Secretary of State, a lot of people thought that that meant that there would be a tough policy on Iran because Rubio is an Iran hawk. But Witkoff has been put on the Iran portfolio instead of him, according to the Financial Times release today. And Witkoff has a very different approach to Iran from Rubio and from the Iran hawks. He recently said, quote, the president will not allow a bomb to be gotten by the Iranians. Not going to happen. We're not going to that place, but hopefully we can solve it diplomatically. The president is all about solving it diplomatically if that's possible, and if people are going to adhere to their agreements. But if not, then the alternative is not necessarily a good one. So there's a threat here, but the threat is clearly of less importance, of less salience than diplomacy. It's a threat if diplomacy fails. So that goes along with what Israeli officials are hearing. Now the argument is, does this really reflect Trump's policy, or does this reflect a trust he's put in Witkoff, who's going against what Trump wants? So one Republican staffer told the Financial Times, I thought this was interesting, he's already lifting pressure on Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran, and in the process, abandoning American hostages and endangering Israel. He keeps saying he knows what Trump wants, but he doesn't understand what Trump believes. But I'm not so sure that's true. We have that quote from Channel 12 that I already mentioned, but there's other indications as well. Um, Mohammad Javad Zarif, who used to be the Iranian foreign minister, now he's the vice president for strategic affairs, said that it's very good that people like Pompeo and Bolton were not appointed in this administration. And that, quote, I hope this time around Trump will be more serious, more focused, and more realistic. And Trump very specifically, according to the New York Times, told people he doesn't want anyone working for him who worked under Pompeo. Instead, he's had appointments like Michael Domino, who is now Trump's new top Middle East official, the Pentagon, and someone who has advocated restraint in dealing with Tehran and been a very strong critic of American military involvement anywhere. In addition, Eldridge Colby, who was appointed Undersecretary for Defense, has also been noted Iran gov. But there's even more than that. To me, this is the most amazing thing that happened. Trump revoked the security details from Mike Pompeo and John Bolton, despite the fact that there are threats to their lives from Iran. That's really interesting considering that Iran has allegedly threatened his life as well, and he's very aware of the risk that this entails. That's something that Iran will definitely notice. They seem to have marked Pompeo as enemy number one, as we saw from what Zarif said. A very cynical and Games of Thrones interpretation of this could be he's saying to Iran, hey, go ahead and kill them. Just don't kill me. I can make a deal with you. They're to blame for the problems that we had in the past. That might be taking it a little far, but why is he removing security detail from two people who, according to the New York Times, um, security officials say are under threat of assassination from Iran? That raises a lot of eyebrows and is a very strong and strange signal that Trump is sending uh, to Iran. Now, why is Trump going in this direction? Why are Trump and Witkoff going in this direction? I think there's a few reasons, and all of them kind of make sense to me. One, Iran caused less problems. They caused plenty of problems, but they caused less problems during the JCPOA period when the Iran deal was extant. And having them unleashed hasn't proved very stabilizing for for the region. But on the other hand, Iran is also weaker than ever. And that means if you get a deal now, there's a good chance you could get it at better terms than you could get at any other period. So, from a pure bargaining perspective, this is the time to pursue a diplomatic route. I'm sure that they're aware of that. Third, Iran is closer than ever to having nuclear weapons. They say that they're not pursuing nuclear weapons, but they also hint that they're getting closer. And a failure of diplomacy might lead to them finally being open about nuclear relations. Finally, considering that the Trump administration is also trying to end the war in Russia, they might be trying to put a wedge between Iran and Russia that will facilitate both of those processes, making both of them feel more alone and more likely to reach some sort of resolution. So that's the thinking. Um, Experts who are aware of the positions of both parties on a nuclear deal say that the chances of a deal succeeding are not very high. But it looks like the chances that there will be an attempt to go there are high. And of course, Trump is an unconventional negotiator. He sometimes makes concessions other people aren't expecting. He sometimes managed to get concessions from the other side people aren't expecting. So no one would be shocked if he actually got an Iran deal, but that is very far away. If it fails, perhaps a nuclear attack, an attack on the nuclear systems will be on the table once again, but not before that. This causes a lot of difficulties for Netanyahu. If you remember from previous episodes, I talked about how Netanyahu managed to keep Smotrich in the government barely, and also wants to get Ben-Gvir back into the government. And one of the ways he hopes to do that is by giving them concessions from Trump. And an attack on Iran was the number one thing that Trump could give him. And that is clearly not happening. He doesn't think it's worth it to try to maintain Netanyahu's government. So the only thing that's left is to recognize annexation of some of the settlements. The trouble with that is it might interfere with Saudi normalization, which is currently the number one goal that Trump and Witkoff are adopting. So there's a lot to look at here, but it's very clear that Trump is adopting a much more, dare I say, Obama-esque foreign policy than anyone would expect. Not that different also from Joe Biden, perhaps more firm in some ways, but not that different. This is a very, very bad blow for Netanyahu and his survival chances, but possibly could increase stability and the chances of, dare I say it, peace in the region if there's a deal with Iran, normalization with um, Saudi Arabia. That would require progress on the Palestinian track as well. So, a very promising but unexpected start for Trump's foreign policy in the Middle East. So that's it for this episode. If you like what I do here, consider supporting me on Patreon at Shael Media, and I have a new episode out of my history podcast, History of the Land of Israel podcast, on the destruction of the Kingdom of Israel by the Assyrian Empire. You can't afford to miss that. I'll see you here very soon because interesting things never stop happening.